start, I want to clarify a little bit by what I mean by cliffhangers, because you sometimes hear that used in a couple of different ways. One of them is a book that ends on a cliffhanger in order to sell the next book. This is something that's a little more common in self-publishing, to sort of basically split a book up into pieces. And that's not what I'm talking about now. We can talk about that in the Q&A if you want to. But I'm really here to talk about chapter-ending cliffhangers as a way to get the reader to turn the page, keep reading, or if they have to put the book down because they have to do something like, oh, go to bed, or go to work, then at least making them want to come back and find out what happens next. So, next slide, please. To start out a little bit about me, for those of you who don't already know me, my first book, The Well of Sacrifice, came out in 1999, which is a long time ago now. And when I wrote this book, I had gone to grad school. I have a degree in professional writing and publishing, and it was very critique-based classes. I didn't really learn anything about structure. I didn't learn about pacing or cliffhangers or even getting off to a fast start, because the focus was more literary and so more about the language. So with this book, I kind of got lucky in that I really didn't know what I was doing, but somehow I did it right. And also the Maya was something that there really weren't a lot of books about the Maya for young people. The book has been picked up and used in a lot of schools over the years. It's still in print. Because I filled a niche, again, accidentally, I had no idea. So this book has been very successful for me. But after I wrote this book, I then went on to realize how much I still did not know about writing. And I wrote a number of novels which are not published, some of which will never be published because they were really the practice novels that most people write first. And I just happened to get my order a little bit backwards. But over the course of writing all those novels, I did learn a lot. I studied writing through books and workshops and conferences. I got involved in writing work for hire, nonfiction, and eventually some fiction. And eventually I got a chance to write a Nancy Drew book. Yes, and this is very exciting because, of course, everybody knows Nancy Drew. The things that most impress people are that I've had stories published in Highlights and I wrote a Nancy Drew book. Because we've heard of those things. Everybody knows them. It was also great because I got to work with two experienced editors. And the first one really pushed me to work on some of the plotting things, and then she left and somebody else took over. And in polishing the manuscript, she really taught me something about cliffhangers. And I think that what I learned from that helped me then sell an original series for children, the Haunted series about a brother and sister who travel with a ghost hunter TV show. So I'm somewhat, despite having a degree in writing, a lot of this is really being self-taught or taught by all the experts around me, the other writers, by reading analytically and by working with editors. I also now write for adults under the name Chris Eboch, so romantic suspense. And so a lot of these techniques, writing for children, writing for adults are not that different. You use a lot of the same pacing and so forth. And the cliffhangers I'm going to talk about, certainly they work well in suspense or mystery or thrillers. That's kind of an obvious thing. But really they work in any genre. They also can work in some forms of nonfiction, such as biographies or memoir, where you're really telling a person's story. You can still look for those dramatic moments and write them as cliffhanger chapter endings to get the reader to turn the page. They also work in picture books for younger children, so I will use some examples from those things as we go along to show how widespread this is. Before we get into the details of writing a cliffhanger chapter ending, I want to talk a little bit more generally about plotting, because if you don't have drama in your story, it's going to be hard to find a place to have a cliffhanger. So you need to start by making sure that you have enough tension, enough suspense, enough excitement, regardless of what kind of book it is. That's a nonfiction example. So one more? Okay. So want and need. This is something that you need to have in, again, just basically any kind of a book. What does the main character want? What is their goal? What problem are they trying to solve? And if you focus on that throughout the book, you're going to have some level of suspense because the reader wants to find out, are they going to succeed in solving their problem? Are they going to get what they want? Now, want and need are a little bit different. Sometimes they may be the same, but sometimes what they want is not what they really need. So the want may drive the external plot. It's what they're physically going out and trying to achieve, while the need may drive the character arc, how the character changes. And that may be subtler. It may be something that the character doesn't realize towards the end, until the end, and the reader doesn't realize towards the end. But I do a lot of manuscript critiques, and one of the biggest problems I see is that it starts out and the character has no goal. They're just kind of drifting through life, or things are happening to them. Maybe even terrible things are happening to them, but they're just passive. And it's hard to root for a character when we don't know what they want, when we don't know what would be a success for them. So try to think in terms of, right from the beginning, establishing some kind of a goal. It may not be the overall goal of the story. If you're writing a mystery novel, you don't necessarily have to have a murder on the first page. You may not establish that they're trying to solve this particular crime on the first page, but maybe they have some other kind of goal. So a smaller goal can lead into a bigger goal, or goals can change over time. You may have more than one goal, but make sure that there is a goal, that it's clear to the reader. I think a lot of times as writers, we know what our characters want, we know what they're doing, we know how they feel and how they're reacting, but we forget to put it on the page. Because to us, we're feeling those emotions, but we don't realize that we haven't shown it to the reader. And that's when you get, from the reader's point of view, a goal that's vague, or it may seem that the character loses track, like they started out with a strong goal, but now they're just doing a bunch of other random things that don't have anything to do with that. Or the goal has changed, but we don't really know why. So it's fine if the goal changes, it's fine if they have more than one goal, but you need to let the reader know what's happening. So, as some examples in terms of focusing on the main character's goal. So in The Eyes of Pharaoh, this is a mystery novel for children set in ancient Egypt. It starts out with the main character, Seshta, is a dancer, and her goal is to win a big contest, because that will sort of set her up for life as a performer. So it's something very important to her. But then a friend of hers disappears. And so she has a second goal, find out what happened to him. And as she decides that maybe something really bad happened, figure out how to rescue him. So over the course of the novel, she still has both of these goals, and they're in conflict, because sometimes she has to give up preparing for her contest in order to search for her friend. So that can be a great way of using more than one goal, because then you put some tension on that character for what are they going to do next? Which goal are they going to pursue? Ultimately, in the end, she has to make the choice of what is more important to her. The Genie's Gift is also for young people. It's historical fantasy. It draws on a lot of the Arabian Nights mythology. And the main character in this is a 13-year-old girl who has led a very sheltered life. She's shy, she doesn't have a lot of confidence, and she finds out that her father is setting up a marriage for her. So her fear is not simply of getting married, but of that she won't have any power in her life, that she won't be able to protect herself and her children and advocate for herself. So she hears about a genie that can give the gift of sweet speech. And if you get this gift, you can charm anyone with your words. So basically, you can get whatever you want. But the genie is far away, and there's many trials and challenges that are between her and the genie. So what she wants is the gift of sweet speech. What she needs is some life experience and some confidence, which she gets over the course of her journey. So it's really her actions over the course of her journey which give her what she wants, not finding the genie in the end. And that story is also more episodic. So at one point, she finds a bird in the desert, and she rescues it from some wolves. And the bird says, "Here, take my feather and go to this place where there's a princess under a spell, and use my feather and you can break the spell." So she goes there and she does that, and then that leads to another complication, which leads to another complication. So she has all these steps along the way, but it's tied together by that overall goal of reaching the genie. So that gives it some driving force for the whole novel, where if it had just been a series of adventures, it would have been a little bit easier to put down.